Hello, all. Well, I finally have things together, so we can resume martial arts after dark. Yeah, we've got a nice setup here, a lamp that actually works, and all that good stuff. So, this series, we sort of informally touch on subjects related to combatives and self protection. And I just thought tonight we might discuss some of the perceptions people have about the different styles and what a style is, and how it all fits into what people think about fighting these days. So I will tell you right off the bat that I see incredible amounts of ignorance regarding MMA. Most people think that because in MMA you're fighting, that constitutes some sort of a enlightened perspective regarding self-protection. Well, I'm going to tell you why that's wrong, and I'm going to tell you historically. There's assumptions made about how martial arts were based on how martial arts are today. So, for example, what you see in karate studios today, what you see on YouTube and these people that come out and they claim to be. But the fact of the matter is, if you were coming up in times past, the clubs were fighting clubs if they were in cities, usually. And they were very good at fighting. And they were very competent and able. So this notion that people, because I didn't go into a ring, and actually we did go into rings, but that's another, let's just make an assumption. Well, no. I mean, whatever you want to call it, fighting was done. Not sparring, but fighting, okay? And this kind of idea that if you don't go into a ring in that environment, you're lacking. It's very ignorant, okay? Now, it comes from a couple of things. First problem is people don't understand that the whole combative situation can be approached in a different manner depending. So certainly, if you're young and strong and learn how to fight, you can just fight. It works perfectly. You get into street fights, go into a boxing gym, wrestle. You'll do very well that way. Why don't people just do that? Well, there are a couple of reasons. First of all, the problem with martial arts is that it's always been a game for the few that the many want to claim. I bounced for years, and I've watched every manner of individual claiming that they did this. They used to come up to me, hey man, we should spar sometime. I'd watch these idiots get into fights, and they didn't know a damn thing, okay? I've watched people who were boxers break their hands, okay? Trying to hit somebody in a chaotic environment and wound up hitting parking meters, concrete. So, really proficient martial arts is a rarity, okay? And furthermore, when you approach martial arts from some of the, we'll call it the Asian perspective, you're not learning how to fight in a vacuum. And there's reasons for that. Back in the day, a lot of what your life depended on was not only your ability to get into a ring and duke it out, but your ability to sustain injury, your ability to be able to cure yourself and others, your ability to be able to use all kinds of implements that presented themselves as weapons, okay? Which is why if you look at traditional weapons, and again, another thing people do, okay, everybody is always talking about, well, this this weapon was an agricultural implement. Look, people, things that people used historically were used for farming, okay? And they were used for fighting. And gradually, as fighting became more specialized, okay, and farming became more specialized, things changed. I'm right here in Idaho, and I can guarantee you that no potato or onion farmer is using a sickle to farm their crops, okay? And those same implements, when they were developed through the military industrial complex in these societies, and they had them too. If you look at Egypt, if you look at Rome, if you look at the Japanese and the Southeast Asian on a tribal level, people had weapons. The Sikh culture, the Hindus, and they took these implements and made them into weapons, okay? So the fact that they resemble some sort of an implement, just don't be lazy. Look at the history and you'll see it. It's very easy. For example, if I take a sai, okay, it has two prongs in the middle. If I just cut one of those off, I have a truncheon, which was used called a jute, okay? And it is more or less a short stick, okay? Now, you can use the sai for combat. It's a little awkward. It's not quite as efficient. So you can say a jute at some point was probably part of some farming implementation tool set. But you see how inaccurate that is? A jute was developed. It's very specific in its formation to be used as a weapon under certain circumstances, okay? So weapons are weapons developed through cultures that use them on the battlefield, okay? Now, people then will say, well, but a street fight is distinct. There's some truth to that. Rory Miller, one of my favorite people, has said repeatedly that you have to contextualize violence based on very specific circumstances. In other words, what happens in a prison scenario is not really the same as in a bar, yada, yada. Fair enough. However, you can make certain generalizations, and these generalizations generally form the corpus of the good habits we build, so when we have to make any sort of adaptation to a specific combative situation, we are able, and bad habits don't hold us back. And I'll give you an example of that. When Gracie Jiu-Jitsu first came out, everybody wanted to go and train in it, okay? And that's good. I mean, God bless everybody. Here's the thing. Everything that's in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is in Jiu-Jitsu, okay? Its parallels to Judo are right there. Emperor has no clothes. You can't call it Judo. Okay. The point is, Jiu-Jitsu has those techniques, okay? What happened was, in all these places where Jiu-Jitsu went, it was adapted to the combat environment it was needed for. And that's what a martial art is supposed to do. It's supposed to be about, okay? So, all this notion about, excuse me, these martial arts that came and are better or worse, look at things differently. I'm going to teach you something tonight. Listen. What is MMA? I'm going to tell you what it is. If I know how to butcher a pig and you put me in a fish store, I'm going to have a little bit of an adjustment there, okay? So, when you take any martial art and you put it into a ring scenario, there has to be an adjustment. And once you make those adjustments, the art will look a certain way because of the adjustments. So, inevitably, the karate, the jiu-jitsu, the wrestling, the boxing, the Thai boxing, it went into the ring and it all started to look very similar, okay? That's not any sort of indication about the superiority of MMA like most people think. It's a mistake in logic, and I'll explain it when we go to the second part of this.